Hi again, I'm back recording a video this time because of the streaming issues earlier, although the rain has stopped here now. But yeah, just a bit safer to do a video and upload it rather than have problems streaming and then find out I've wasted hours of my time. Okay, so I'll quickly run through the majors and then I'll get onto some alts, and I've had one request for uni so far, and I'll keep an eye on the Telegram if anybody else posts anything in the interim. And as always, please like and subscribe if you enjoy this, and feel free to put any requests in Telegram anytime, and then I'll include them in future videos. So on the old majors, start maybe with Ripple. So Ripple obviously had this Trump pump. It went through. I've already kind of covered what my last entries were in the previous video. But yeah, so we're still holding this upper range. It did make a weekly demand, a weak one, but it came down obviously quite deep inside it. So it's a range demand, which isn't ideal. And so we may see this flip. So ideally, we don't want to close below 2.58 at the end of the week. So it's sort of front running me like a boss at the moment. So I had two short entries on this 3-day here. It was a more aggressive one, and then that 5-day one there that I've had for a while, 5-day, 2-day. So it came up to just short of that entry for a short. And then similarly on the long side, the alert went for a long on the daily demand at the low, and it just very, very slightly front run that. This is, it's sort of similar to Bitcoin now. We're just in a range, and which way it's going to break is kind of probably down to Trump, quite frankly. So we'll see. So I haven't had anything new on this at the moment. It's very similar to Bitcoin. It's probably got supply in here and it's got demand in here, but both are not very high probability. So I'm a bit loath to put any entries on this at the moment. Litecoin came down into my entry that I've had there for a while, so I hope you managed to get that. I have added, I'm a bit tentative about this, like it's made I think it might have made a 4-day supply now, or it might make a 4-day supply, yeah, so it's potentially going to make a 4-day supply in here today, unless depending on the rest of the day. It's already got a 2-day there. And I did put an alert for a possible short on the daily inside that, so it's more to the top of the range. We do have these trend line stops above here, so it's possible we're going to get this breakout, but again, while we're still in the range, we can just trade within the range. I was not actually overly confident of this entry, but it's done all right. But yeah, it's still trapped within the range. There's nothing new really to report. I'm just saying there's a monthly level. Okay, so there's monthly levels here that it could pick up as support, but it hasn't really. Yeah, so need to just wait on this one. There's not much more to say than that. We are near the range lows, so if you can get long entries for the possibility of a bigger up move, go ahead on the lower time frames. Just be conscious of that daily supply in there, and just bring your trailer stops up if necessary. And then if we get the bigger drop, still looking at this 3-day down inside the 2-month zone that we've got here, or 3-day, and then obviously there's this chop in the trend line. So we still run a bit of a risk if we're coming down into here, that we're going to take some of these trend line stops out. But maybe got a bit of time till that happens. It is still holding quite well. BCH obviously is the big gainer for today. It's like I mentioned this in the video the other day or 2 days ago, that I said that this potentially was going to move. It had, again, it swing failed the low once, it swing failed the low twice. I was a bit overly focused on it going down into this monthly demand, and again, I had all these trend line stops here that I think it could go for. So it's a bit of a risky one. Unfortunately, it didn't give. I was looking at it yesterday, but it didn't give the entry that I wanted. I think we had a little 12-hour demand in here, which it did get a bounce off just for a swing fail the highs. But then I was just not loving the structure here and what the rest of the market was doing to look for longs. But unfortunately, fortunately if you're in it, but it did hold. Previously I have added an entry, a possible entry here. So there's a 3-day and then a 3-week supply. We do have stops above this 455 level, so just look for potentially for a stop hunt in here in case we don't get all the way up to the 5-day in there. But also, again, be aware that this whole thing is coming off 6 months demand. So it is entirely possible this just breaks out still. on that from a higher time frame perspective. But it really, I mean, it's very heavily dependent on what the whole market is going to do. You know, and is Bitcoin done? Is the monthly supply on Bitcoin, is that the end of this bull run? And we're going to see that monthly supply play out, you know, at least down into the 3 month demand. But it's kind of, yeah, a question. And if, you know, but if Bitcoin does break down from here, you know, if it bounces on the 3 month, comes back, tests the monthly supply, and then breaks down, then obviously alts are really going to drop. The other problem I had with BCH as well, actually, and again, why I wanted lower, is looking at the grayscale chart. So again, it's bounced just above where I wanted it on the grayscale chart. So I still think there's a possibility this can take a bigger drop. And hence why, again, I've gone slightly more aggressive on the alert for that possible short in there. Let me think, actually, I don't think there's anything on the, it might create a daily demand. So I've got a line in there for that. So, you know, it might create a daily demand in there. Let's go back to the chart quickly. So at this level here, so that might create a daily demand at the end of the day. So you know, if it does, you can potentially look for longs off that. But again, just be conscious of what the rest of the market's doing. And finally, EOS. So EOS reflects probably more of what the other alts look like. So we did get a nice short in here. It was one of the better majors for looking for a short. So it's a challenging one again. You know, it's coming off, I think, 6 month, 3 month supply at the highs, but it's still holding this monthly demand at the lows. It's got equal lows here, so I probably do expect this to take out the lows. But whether it bounces significantly in between, I don't know. You know, we are at a monthly demand here. So I've become a bit more loath with a lot of alts, and a lot of alts looking similar, to put, you know, new entries in. I've done a couple of them where I think they might be weaker, but something like this could pick up the monthly demand and just suddenly make a run for it. Again, just to show what other alts are looking like. So I'll take some of my drawings off so you can see. So we did have a weak 5 day supply in here, and a lot of alts looked the same. It looked for a while like this was going to convert to a weekly supply. However, that pump at the end of the week kind of negated the weekly on virtually everything. So that but the 5 day is still valid. And then in addition, like Ether, it's, you know, it had a daily demand, but it's come straight back through it, and it's flipped that daily into a supply. So again, like I don't want to short this here, I don't think. It feels too aggressive. And also, you know, it is still in a range. We're at the bottom of the range. So this, okay, even the 5 day supply is weak because it hasn't broken that low. But yeah, but I also don't want to long this either. So I don't want to long right into a local supply there. And then above, we've got this 5 day supply that I've talked about previously, and then there's also a monthly. So I think I've left the alert as more aggressive. I have 4 day, then 3 day supply, but then also a monthly. So yeah, again, just looking around that area for possible short entries if we get back up there. And then, you know, to the downside, like I say, I probably would want to take out these lows, but there is a 4 day demand in between, so that's potential for looking for long entries if it comes back there. Moving on, if my chart's going to load, taking its time. I don't know if I'm going to have to reload the page or not. This is how bad my computer is. I'll just reload the page. Well, actually, this is probably not a computer issue. This is probably more of an internet issue today. Again, with the rain. It shouldn't be really, because my internet got upgraded to fibre a couple of years ago, so it's not that old. But I think the wires still get somewhat affected if it does rain heavily. So let's start with ADA. This is ADA if and when it loads. This is really bad today. It's not normally this bad. Give it a little bit of time. Okay, so like ADA was coming off a 6 monthly demand, so I had, you know, the original alert, then the alert for the retest of that level, so that went, you know, very well for the long side. Then I had an alert here if we touch the weekly demand. Yeah, I talked about this in the last video, so again, I hope you got that long entry because that was pretty nice. But again, whether it's going to, you know, just go off here, and it's probably going to be very dependent on Trump, or whether it's going to make a higher low and consolidate before a move up, I don't know. It is possible still that, you know, we've had an impulse, we're going to get an A, B, C down to here, so I have reset an alert for that level. That circle didn't work very well, but I've reset an alert there, as you can see at the cross. On the 4 hour, there's a 4 hour and 8 hour demand there, and I don't love the zones, but you know, it is the start of the up move, so it is certainly worth watching if we get a retest now for a new entry. But if you entered here, then yeah, if you scalped it, you should be taking profit by now because it's approaching the top of the last down move. And failing that, then we know we might get a breakout from this. You know, it is a 6 month demand, just put that high. So structurally, when you come down into a 6 month demand, we expect to take out the high, and I believe it's a strong demand. Let me see if I can show move my drawings. Yeah, so it's strong-ish, I guess. So it's a strong demand from the perspective that we have the down candle, and then we have an up move that closed above the down candle. However, obviously we're still within the range of this down move. And this has always been my challenge with alts, that when everybody's super bullish, it's like, well, for me, I just see two options, I guess. You know, in this case, you know, it has come down and hit an annual demand, but could have come lower inside. But, you know, I'm not sure, is this, you know, an impulse down, then we're getting an ABC correction up, and then we're going to get the, you know, the bigger C wave. So the bigger thing, A, B, C, is going to take us down into lower demand. You know, or failing that, are we even at least going to get a retracement, an A, B, C, such that we get a bigger triangle? So there's, you know, the two common corrections are triangles or zigzags. So a triangle obviously would take us in for a higher low here before it move up, and a zigzag would take us down here before it move up. So that's always the challenge with this. And again, I need to go back. I have gone back briefly and looked at the BTC pairs, but I need to kind of probably go back and do it again. At least now we've had these moves because we were taking so long to move off that level. ADA also came up into monthly supply and it went right to the top. So that's the other kind of issue with this, that, you know, it did pump through and it just took out the high of monthly supply. So that's fine. I've left the zone in there because if it does drop back through, it might then find resistance at this zone at a later date. And I'm going to take out the actual zone low and just leave the level in. So that's that. And then similarly here, take out this zone. So we're still holding. So this is still our supply to get past this daily at the top here. And yeah, so we just need to see a little bit more follow up on this. And then if we do go higher, we're looking at the 3 week up here, or weekly even higher. You know, there's a lot of zones before we start, or a couple of zones before we start making all-time high. To the downside, 3 week and monthly demand, but obviously that's going to be a fairly significant drop, and I dread to think what would happen to the rest of the market if ADA goes all the way down there. But cross that bridge when we come to it. What else have we got here? We've got BNB. So BNB is a little bit messy, well, actually very messy. So I think I'm just going to avoid it for a little while until it just moves out of this range. So obviously it was one of the stronger ones off that original bounce after we had the drop at the start of February. But then, and I'd also said, you know, it hit this yearly level here, so that was, you know, promising. Take that one out now, and that one. It had hit this yearly level, but then it was unable to break the high. So if that's the case, then potentially it can come back and take out this low. Or at least go back and test that annual level, similar to how ADA's done with the 6 month and what was the other one? No, I think it's ADA with the 6 month. No, not Litecoin. No, I've forgotten anyway. I think there's one other one that's similar, but this has come back, you know, so I would quite like this to come back and retest that annual level. But again, like because it's bounced off the annual, because it's also holding this 2 monthly here, I'm again a bit loath to start looking for aggressive shorts, assuming we're going to make a lower high. So I had that short in there for the 4 hour up here, so I've just kind of left that for the moment because you never know. And then potentially, obviously, if we break all-time high again, then we can look for either a break retest trade for a long or a stop hunt for the looking to get in the short. But again, the bounce off annual demand, we do expect to break the high ultimately, and any trades in here are just like tentative. So, you know, I had a nice short up here off daily supply or 2-day supply, and then trying to look for the longs here, but they're not bouncing very well. Just, you know, both worked, but neither went very high and neither went back into supply. So this could get another drift down. As I said, for EOS, you know, it just doesn't have the 5-day supply. The structure is a little bit different, but it does have this daily supply locally. So again, I'm not really wanting to long this right now. Although it has got the same as everything else, it's got a 4 hour demand inside it, so it could get a bounce here for another push. But yeah, I just don't love the structure, and I think there's better things to trade than to try and get into these in lowish probability zones. That's BNB. Dogecoin, Doggycoin. Yeah, not dissimilar to everything else. I wanted a bit lower, so this does have an annual demand, so really I'd like to see this hit annual demand. Like if you want to trade this on the macro, you want to hopefully get a bounce on 0.17, or failing that, you know, at least a move deeper inside it could take you down to the 2 monthly zone there. There's a 2 week at the bottom, so there's various zones inside the annual, but provisionally you're looking at for a bounce on the top of the annual level, much as we just saw with BNB. This does now have a monthly supply up here. And various weeklies and things in between. And I did talk about this in the last video, that I was less certain. I don't know whether to take this entry out or not. You know, now we had a pump, but it hit daily supply just underneath this weekly. And, you know, that it's difficult because sometimes, you know, then people would have closed, you know, anybody who was trapped long here potentially would have closed their trades, so there would be less resistance if it returns to that level. But then also sometimes it can return to the level and stop hunt the previous high before the drop. So I think I left it in for the time being, but I'm still a bit tentative about it. But if that one fails, then you're looking for this monthly supply and a test in there. And if this hits the annual first, then I'll take out this and possibly even this as well. But I would just like to see the strength of the bounce off the annual if and when it ever gets there. It's got a 3-day, in this case, it's got a 3-day also immediately above price, a week 3-day supply. So again, I'm not looking to long this, even though it's got the same 4 hour demand here. So yeah, there's not much new to add on that. Link. Again, that same type structure. So Link actually had an annual, it's got an annual demand here, and it bounced initially off that, but was unable to make a higher high and has now come down deeper into the annual demand. I've just like removed the grey colour of my annual demand just because there's too many colours on the screen and I can't see what I'm doing. So this has now come down to 6 month demand inside the annual. So a lot of these, like how deep they're going to go in the zones, like often just depends on what the rest of the market's doing. Like if it hits at the right time, then it's going to have a strong move. So like here, it hit obviously at the right time and had a decent move up, although it didn't break the high. But then obviously the rest of the market's coming down, so it's now ended up coming deeper inside. So as I just said with Dogecoin, like it just depends on what the rest of the market's doing at the time that level hits. And so this, you know, again, I was looking for the longs on this 6 month demand, and you know, it had a bit of a wick down inside the zone and then went up to daily supply, and again has like just front run. There's a weekly in here. It's just front run that. And then I think at the moment I've just got an alert on this daily here just because it's clean, and I thought maybe, you know, if it gets a bounce, it could take out those stops and reject there. But then there's also, you know, 5-day supply here. There's stops also above this level, and then a daily at the top untested. So if given it's coming off a 6 month demand, you know, yes, I can potentially look for short entries, but the bias is still, you know, this is going to go ultimately all the way through if the rest of the market allows it. And let me just look at the bigger structure on this. But again, yeah, so but the risk on that, so while I still think that 6 month can play out, so I would still probably expect this. Whether that's going to then reject here or go for the higher high, I'm uncertain. You know, obviously this is because this is still potentially just a corrective wave of that down move. So when it corrects it here for another drop. So that is a possibility. And that's kind of just generally my indecision with most of the alts which have history, that they, you know, have these, you know, so if they've made an annual demand or a 6-month demand like this, I'm erring towards more bullish. You know, this does have multiple short zones, which can often also mean it just blasts through all of them. But I think, you know, there are risks that we're running. You know, there's a similar structure here that I've seen with, you know, the triangle and then the distribution and runs back through. You know, we've got this triangle here. Are we having a distribution that's going to run back through, and therefore, you know, that we get the bounce here? You know, 6-month demand is 6-month demand, but it can fail if it's in the context of the bigger structure. And if the bigger structure is this, then, you know, it is possible that that 6-month zone fails. And I have seen that on other alts. I'm trying to remember which ones. I think even ADA, actually. I think ADA had a 6-month demand, and it's come back and made a new one now. But I believe it had a 6-month, which I was very bullish on previously, and eventually it just ran through it. So, as always, I just like to trade both directions and see what, you know, what builds from each zone. I don't trade holding on to these things. I haven't got the patience. I've barely even got the patience, you know, to hold from here like November to the mid-December. So like, you know, the 6 weeks it takes for this. When you never know, like it's all fair and well to look back and say, well, that's a 6 weeks, you know, that's, you know, you could have held that for 6 weeks and you have this massive move. But what, you know, if you tried to hold here for 6 weeks or here for 6 weeks, you know, you don't know that you're there until it's there. And that's why I much prefer scalping as a trader rather than an investor. So yeah, locally, you know, this also has this daily supply similar to Ether, week daily supply, but it has just closed below the zone. So again, I'm not loving wanting to put long entries on this, but this is probably one of the better ones compared to what I've shown already. Like if you're going to trade one that's under supply like this or just in supply, then at least choose one of the ones that's hitting a major zone at the base. I think that's all of these new majors. Yeah, so my preference, to be, if I was looking for longs, it's probably ADA, because obviously that's the strongest overall. But Link would probably be the next best, based on where it is in structure. BNB to some extent, but again, like I just would prefer to have that decent retracement down to this annual zone first. What else do we have? So then we've got, Dot, Sol, Atom and Near. So these I kind of have actually been slightly more aggressive on the short side, but let's look at Sol first, just to, Sol again is a very challenging structure. We had that Trump pump for the weekend, and it is on a 2-month zone, and you know, I was looking already for longs on that zone. So it came back down inside and has given a decent move, but it's just come up into daily supply or in a 4-hour, even inside just through that daily. It's got a monthly supply immediately above, so that's what I had alerted for the short. So I would like to see another move on this in a perfect world. But the problem is, again, it had a daily demand and it's come back through it. And again, much like I said on Ether, so I had the long entry here for the daily demand. It ran through there. I did also say in the last video there was a 2-hour at the bottom here that I'd actually had alerted from back here and left the alert in. I was like, if it comes into this 2-hour, look for the long, you know, if it takes out the daily. So that held quite nicely, but again, hasn't gone very far and has now made this daily supply. So again, I just need to see some more. If this is just going to reject and drop further from here, it's entirely possible. But yeah, so if you got in on that 2-hour, great, but I wouldn't suggest buying this like right now. But you can keep an eye on the low time frames as always. You know, maybe it'll give an entry if you're desperate to buy Sol. But again, there are probably better things that you could be buying. Failing that, you know, there's a monthly zone down here. And I've always said with Sol, you know, that there was the risk that this is a much bigger picture, but very similar to the Ripple structure that I've discussed many times. But this is obviously a much higher time frame, but that we're doing, again, this triangle distribution and then run through the triangle. Oops, I mean to do that, press the wrong mouse key, but you saw that anyway very briefly. And that it's going to run through and take out the lows of the triangle. So, you know, we can look for longs on the 2-month demand, but again, it's potentially weak demand. In fact, it is weak demand because it's only it's come over the top of the range, but it's only failed the all-time high on this. So, It's entirely possible now this is just a giant range and we're going to resolve this range all the way back down to the bottom. So don't be surprised if that happens. But again, for now, we just trade the 2-month demand up to the monthly supply and see what we get there. You know, if it does break the monthly supply, then great. But ultimately, I'd be looking for shorts in here on this. What else? So just trying to hide that off the screen so I can see. You can see a bit better on the vertical if you're watching on the vertical. Yeah, near, atom, and dot I think are all pretty similar. So as I said, we had this 5-day supply, which looked like it was going to convert to a weekly. So it's the same as on EOS that I said. You know, it looked like it was going to convert to a weekly, but then closed a very strong candle instead. But then has just dropped back down. So we've still got that 5-day in there. May also create a new 5-day, new 4-day at the moment. So on this one, particularly near, has a new 3-day. So I have on this and atom, I think, put more aggressive shorts just so we've got some more immediate entries if the market remains still relatively slow. I still think, you know, we are overdue a bounce really. So, you know, we've had quite a long down move. But, you know, it's a little bit awkward because if you look back at previous down moves, you know, here, you know, we had then a decent retracement that took some time, but then when we got to here, this barely had any retracement at all. The here barely had any retracement at all. Here was just rejecting, you know, this is a 3-day chart. So, and then we had decent retracement. So at what point do we say we're going to have a decent retracement? I mean, you can probably look at divergences and things like that. And you look at where the others chart is and whether we're due like a bigger bounce across the market. And based on the others chart, I think we are, and we have been further. We hit that zone a few days ago, oh no, a couple of weeks ago, I think even, but it's just taking its time consolidating and some of the alts are dropping lower in the process. So in the case of near, it is in a monthly demand. So again, it could, you know, it's come deep down almost to the bottom, so it could still hold here and get a bigger up move. But my preference really would be for it to come down to closer to the 61 fib and into this lower, it's a 3-month demand down there. So again, I don't, you know, just for the sake of having some more aggressive entries, I put that 3-day supply entry, that possible entry there. If it does go through, then we've got a 2-day supply up here and we've got a 3-week inside. And again, we've got the same chop as we see on so many alts. Yeah, just for comment on that, actually, I've seen a mix now. So some of alts have tested this zone and rejected. Others have run through this zone where there's an untested 5-day above. Some of them are rejecting there. So it does seem to be a bit of a mix. It doesn't necessarily seem to be consistent of whether, because my concern with this 3-week that we've got in the middle is that on most of the charts, it's been tested on the lower time frames. So let's look and see what this one is. Yeah, so here, you can see we have a weekly supply in there and it's tested on the next weekly and then it's dropped down. Then on the 5-day, yeah, again, you can see the chop coming off this. It's tested, it had a 5-day in there and it's tested that before dropping down. But if you look at the 3-week chart, it looks like a clean 3-week zone. So it's made me slightly skeptical as to whether to look for shorts in that zone or whether accept that, you know, this slow drop off of the zone has weakened the zone. So anyway, yeah, but again, we'll see if we get back up there. At the moment, I've just gone more aggressive on this. So this has now also made a 2-month supply. It's got a monthly supply up here. It's obviously come up, tested, rejected that. It's now made a 2-month. And I'm also seeing now, again, a few of the alts, not many, but some are also now testing this 2-month level here and just rejecting straight off that level. Hence why I've got the slightly more aggressive short based on the 2-month at the start of that zone. But that's near. Atom, yeah, similar. And Atom, I've always been more bearish on because Atom came off 6-month supply at the high, and I think it's now made a yearly in there. So if it does come back there, I'd still be looking to short this. And again, it's got the similar chop and structure here. It did make a monthly supply in the middle. But again, like I do want this lower. It's in a 6-month demand overall. But obviously, this rejection of 6-monthly supply, I expect to take out this low. In fact, actually, maybe it has taken out the low already, or it's made a kind of equal bottom here. It hasn't quite taken out the low, but I'd like to see this drop. So again, this is the other one being one of the weaker ones that I've gone a slightly more aggressive short entry, or a much more aggressive short entry. on this 2-day and daily supply in there. My reticence and my concern, I guess, is that we could stop hunt these highs. So it's again a challenging, like when we do a drop like this and then we start to make these lower highs, then you can see just a big drop off. But given we haven't had that immediate drop off, there is a slight concern that, you know, we could come in here and reject, but also we could come and take the stops before rejecting. And that's particularly probably more of an issue on Atom than on NEAR, because NEAR took the stops. You can see here on the 25th of February, so on that first bounce it took the stop, so it hasn't got this slow decline trend line that Atom does. But Atom I typically think is one of the weaker ones, so I think it's worth looking for possible shorts on that daily supply more aggressively. DOT is basically the same, and I could do potentially exactly the same short entry here, but my concern with DOT is just being on this monthly demand. While I don't think it's a strong monthly demand and I think it's going to break, again, we are at the bottom of the range, so I don't want to make the assumption it's going to break right now. You know, this is basically is a giant triangle, like a very, very slight gradient triangle. So it hasn't taken out the high here and hasn't taken out the low here. And now we're back at the bottom, so, you know, maybe this is going to do a big move up, I don't know. But at the moment, I don't want to look for long entries on this. I would want it lower if I'm going to look for long entries. It is on a monthly demand. It's a second hit on monthly demand. It hasn't made a monthly supply, but it does have a 3-weekly supply up here. And again, I've just been slightly more aggressive on the short here, just in case it gets an early rejection. I think I was hoping that would have hit already. But again, we just need to see what these give. You know, that there is a possibility they just fall off a cliff here, and then there's an equal possibility that we could be getting this type of movement again, similar here, that's going to suddenly resolve into a big up move. And that, you know, that is, you know, it is probably a possibility. You know, like we do have Trump, you know, supporting the crypto market now, so, you know, maybe I'm, you know, completely we're not wrong, you know, because I'm just looking at zones as and when they hit, but maybe I'm wrong as such in that, you know, on Friday that, you know, Trump will say something good and we're at this point in time, and that, you know, Friday is just going to see that, and I'm going to get, you know, a lot of the short entries are going to get blasted out of the water, possibly, and that's why I try and position both directions. So I'm not saying here that you shouldn't position in longs. I'm just saying, again, there are other things that I would prefer to look for longs on than DOT, Atom and NEAR. Like, if you were going to do anything, I would say Sol, ADA and Ripple, because they're the ones that Trump's already mentioned. And then other stronger ones like BNB, because it came off the yearly zone, like Link, because it's in coming off a 6-month zone. Like, those are the ones that I would prefer. And even Dogecoin, you know, like maybe if it doesn't get down to the yearly level, but certainly if it gets to the yearly level there. But I would much prefer to look for longs on those than on, and on Litecoin as well because of the ETF, but than on DOT, Atom, NEAR, EOS are the weaker ones of all of this section that I go through. Anyway, that's enough on the majors. On alts, I've had a whole bunch of alerts coming through. I went through all the alerts in the last video that I'd already had for March, and there was kind of 50 odd, and so I don't want to, we've had a whole lot more come through since then, so some obviously would have been blown out of the water. We've got a huge move on res there actually, so let me have a quick look at that. But I was saying in the group, the ones I kind of wanted people to keep an eye on particularly were Aave, ENS, and Banana, because those I think had hit major zones and they hadn't been tested. Banana's probably a bit more of a wild card, but Aave's done I think quite nicely off that zone. Or in fact no, but it did also, Aave did front run the zone very slightly. And then I had some more tenuous ones, so like let's say, let me just check I'm on the right where I want to be looking. Let's go on the Toshi chart. So Aave, yeah, just sort of slightly front run the zone, but like, so it is in a weekly zone. It's also in an annual zone, so I do want to be, you know, looking for longs on Aave, but again, like this, the alert went, but then I've reset the alert for, you know, I wanted it on the sort of 3-week monthly down here. So again, if you get another drop on this, then that's where you should be looking for the high time frame longs on this. Cook was the other one of the other ones I'm going to show. So I've had some more aggressive alerts that I put in on things that are really just in epic downtrends like this. So for example, so this I had showed the other day, I was looking for a higher low on daily demand, did get a nice bounce off it, but obviously has now come back down into the zone. But basically, though, if you're longing anything like this, you're guessing. There's no demand here, there's no support, there's no nothing. And so it's similar to here, I can put the alert in, this did have support here and it's broken through it, but now we are in a very clear downtrend. So any long you take on this is really guessing. So ideally you want to be looking for longs where you've got something to the left to look for a long from. But having said that, it's worth an eye on some of them in case you're going to get that early entry. Griffin was a nice one that I talked about in the last stream as well. Like I had 2 alerts on this for this daily demand for the first one and then for the retest, and this did actually make, I haven't got the other, maybe I've just deleted it. So this had actually made 3-day supply. So this is what you could see on those other alts that I've just talked about. Like this did make a weak 3-day supply, but it's now run back through it. So if this flips to a demand, then this is going to be a much stronger potential entry for looking for bigger picture longs. I've got the next alert on the 5-day supply in here, so we'll see what the reaction is there and if it can potentially come down. So if by then it's made a 3-day demand, so if this then confirms into a 3-day demand, you're potentially looking for rejection off here and then looking for a long entry to then take you up to weekly supply. So that'd be quite a nice little structure if it's given. What else? I'm going to run through a few of them just to see what the structures are. So this one, I think I was saying I potentially would like it to take out the low, but it could have potentially stop hunted into this daily demand. So that's got a little bounce off there, which is pretty nice. ACT was one that I would kind of want to just keep coming back because it keeps doing a lot of sideways action. So I had a... some of them are just quite nice off supply and demand. So you see we've got a nice short there, a nice short here, a nice short here, a nice short here. And then I was wondering if this was going to hold to actually give another up move. But it's now slowed down dramatically. So I think I had an alert there for 5-day demand, 4 or 5-day demand in there. Then I put a second alert if it came deeper into this 2-day inside it. So it's done that, but in the meantime, it's making a lot of daily supply above. But yeah, this is worth an eye on the high time frames, I think, just in case, if it does, it's making, little trend line stops there, which I don't love. But the trend line stops on crypto are kind of a bit challenging because in some cases you can see it make trend line stops and then eventually it just really runs straight off them, and in other cases it will take them all out. So, and if it fails this, then got a long drop. So it could be very nice both ways. So it's just one I like. Keeping an eye on there. Let me see if there's anything else that's moved significantly that's worth looking at. Cato. Yeah, so this actually had the alert, did just get very slightly run through there. So I had an alert for a long on this 12-hour demand here, and I said there was a 3-day at the base. So obviously it's come down a little bit deeper into the 3-day, did take out the 12-hour into the lower 12-hour. I've now added another possible long entry on this. So again, it's hit and miss. Are we going to get some sort of bull retracement on at least on the others chart, if not like another bull move? But if we are, things like this are what I want to be in, where we've already already tested and rejected local supply. If we can then make the higher low here, then great. Still a possibility of it going down to that 2-hour and taking out all these trend line stops, but again, we'll see. Maybe it's going to pick up this old 12-hour demand that I originally wanted to get the long on as support. Oh yeah, res, that's what I was going to look at, wasn't it? Well, okay. So yeah. So this is exactly what I said at the when I was looking at Cook, for example, why it's worth looking at anything, so it's still in a downtrend. So what we're seeing here is we've got a downtrend. Oh, hold on. What's going on there? Let me pick up my brush. So we've got a downtrend on the the daily chart here. You're seeing clearly downtrend, rejection, rejection. So here is really where you want it to break. if you're looking for a new up move. So obviously, you know, it's done all this consolidation in here and then it's come up and tested it, so it hasn't broken supply. So this at this point is still weak demand. However, if you've got a lower time frame supply, so in this case it is actually a 3-day supply in there that it's rejected off on that candle, and it's got a lower time frame supply, and at this point it's now got, it may even have a weekly demand in there now, I'm not sure, no. It made a 5-day demand, so again worth looking for the long entry, because the supply then and with the amount of consolidation it's had is overtaking the amount of supply. And then obviously we have like 2 monthly supply up here, that's, I'm going to put that alert slightly higher. I've got a 2-month supply up here and a 3-week, 2-week, etc. So that's the next major zones to look at. You know, on the higher time frame, we're still looking at, you know, this being a down move, this being a retracement, this being a down move, possibly a retracement, down move. But that doesn't mean it's not worth trading this at least up to there. Or possibly, if you're lucky, you know, you could take a second take profit on the 5-day supply there. So yeah, so that's a pretty nice long entry there. If anyone took that, I'm not sure whether that, I mean, that certainly would have been in my channel. But that's a pretty nice move on that. So keep an eye for retracements, I think, on that. Jelly was one I was talking about to somebody earlier, because they were asking me, you know, whether they should take a long on this. It's, you know, it's a similar, again, there's just, when you have charts like this, there just isn't enough history. So, you know, but what I do see here again, I guess, is, you know, 4 or 5 days of uptrend and a slow decline down. The problem with the slow declines is what it's telling you is, you know, it's not a fast sell-off, which is great. But then the problem also is that it then makes it, like here, it's now made a 3-day supply. So while it's not a fast sell-off and that's good, it's also got people now, you know, who bought up here who are trapped in here. So while I put an alert here, there's a 1-day indirect demand, and here I put an alert here, blindly not knowing if there's any history before the Bybit chart. But this is still like a high risk long entry. So we are hoping that we're going to get, you know, this at least move up to there. But at this point, I have no idea. And there really isn't enough history to tell. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on these that worth looking at. Cubic was one on the short side, I believe. So yeah, Cubic, I had an entry here. So here's an example actually of where we hit a 2-month supply. So it's come back up, it's done an immediate test of that 2-month supply and then just fallen straight off it. So, and I have said in previous videos, yeah, keep an eye on those because, you know, if they're nice, easy entries really. I mean, you know, they're not easy if you put your stop all the way up here, but if there's something locally at the zone, then you can, or you can get in on the lower time frames, then potentially you can get in the start of what may end up being a much bigger drop if it's coming off 2-month supply. Cubic's probably not an ideal example of that because this is it's not clean up here, and it's possibility of doing too much of a stop hunt if it does want to go higher in the supply. But at least, you know, you've got the clean first entry and you can just hold and see if this can drop significantly lower. On the bullish side, I think the only ones I've really liked are Plume. I keep liking, but is just being really slow. So Plume is certainly worth watching still. I've had alerts on this upper trend line and on this lower trend line. So the alert went on the upper trend line, but it didn't have a significant move above, and it was also on Sunday. So I did tell everybody to wait this out and just see what drop we got. So we've got a drop back into this weekly demand. Unfortunately, it wasn't clear enough in here for me to add any new entry there. So I've just went the more conservative down here if we get there. The alert's now gone again today, but again, it's still rejecting. It's still got this daily supply in here and it's still rejecting off that. So there's a whole bunch of 4-day demand in here as well. So I'd like to see kind of a decent move that's going to then make it a decent new demand. Looking at the daily, so we are potentially, so if we make a new 2-day demand, so if we get a close above this level at the end of the day, and ideally if significantly above this level, but even if it's not much, you know, we might get a test immediately on that level for a push. And then I've also added in, again, this one did have the same 4-hour demand that everything else has down here, so I have added in possibility of a long entry if we revisit there. But Again, it's a difficult one because it's got no history. So while I'm calling this an uptrend, really it's a sideways trend off what's a new coin, unless it's got some, again, prior history that I'm unaware of. But yeah, it's all certainly worth keeping an eye on that to see if it breaks out. AVAI is Ava AI, however you pronounce it, was another similar scenario. So I had an alert here on this trend line, which has gone off today, but it's still sort of struggling to get past it. But this is potential there, so this could potentially, if it holds here, and again the demand here is just not, it's not clean. So it's because we have this big wick through everything. I don't know if we're going to fall back down into this daily at the base. So this could still be like making a sort of bear flag for a bigger drop. But while it's at the top, and if it does break out, then we can keep an eye on that for a breakout. Again, I think I put in that blue level in the hope it makes a daily demand, but this is not confirmed yet. And again, there's nothing there that I really want to look for longs. There's no clean entry at the moment, but if it can get a break of this trend line, then there might be hope for that. Checks I liked, I think. Maybe it wasn't checks. Oh yeah, no, I did like this, but again, from a higher time frame perspective, it's just hit a 6 month demand. So keep an eye on it, but again, still got that probably a 5-day supply in there. No, so it's got a 3-week supply up there, no 5-day locally actually. Run through the time frames. Actually, there's not much locally in there, but it's got the daily locally, so the same as everything else. It dropped down through this daily and is now up, testing it again. Maybe I looked at it when that candle was more green and it looks stronger, but so now it's again, it's dropping back down. But this is something, again, want to keep an eye and see if it's going to give some consolidation through here to look for the bigger long. It is on 6 month demand, could drop to the weekly inside it, so I have put another alert lower if it does come back lower, but that's certainly one to have on your radar. And then, yeah, as I've said previously, you know, the ARV, Banana, ENS are ones to just... So Banana here, you can see it's a clean monthly demand. Yes, it can go deeper inside it, so that doesn't necessarily mean you should insta-FOMO in. You know, there is weekly supply up here that I've got alerted. There's also a weekly in here. So this is one that actually has made a local weekly supply. Maybe even a 2-week actually. Should recheck that before I put the... No, only a weekly. So again, it's probably going to give you some time, and this is what you don't know in crypto. You know, this is a hit monthly demand. If the market suddenly turns bullish, you could suddenly see a run straight through it. It does have 2 months supply up here, so actually I wouldn't be necessarily saying this is going to do a massive breakout, but at least, you know, maybe it'll give a move up to here, retest, etc. before. But it's crypto, so you can't tell if it's going to be nice and give you some consolidation through here before the up move, or if it's just going to throw a giant green candle into the mix. But yeah, that's Banana. Any other ones on here? Pi, yeah, I've talked about a few times. I really wanted it to come down and test this 2-hour zone, I think, or hourly zone inside here, taking out these stops. But we got a bounce and it made a 4-hour demand, so I thought, okay, what the hell, I'll try long in there. So it has moved up, but it hasn't still got past this 4-hour supply. So this potentially, it's made, I think, an 8 or 12-hour demand in there. So again, like if you want to look for aggressive longs on it, there is an 8-hour demand right below the price, but also it hasn't got past local supply. So there is still the possibility this is going to take out trend line stops and come back into here. But if you like Pi, you could potentially look for an aggressive entry at 1.8 or so for a next up move before this drop. But we shall see. I mean, that's just on, this is just the list, so you can see here, this is the whole list, if you want to go and run through and have a look at them yourself of what the longs and shorts that I had. Nero Ether, I thought I'd just comment on quickly because that was one of the strongest ones, and I have no idea why. This, I had a short alert go on the 2-weekly supply there. There is a monthly above But yeah, I'm not sure why this had strength. I mean, yeah, just swing fell the opening price there on MEXC. And I have put an aggressive long entry on this 3-day here, just purely because it's had some strength. It is coming off 2-week supply, and potentially it might even go up into the monthly there or higher before coming to test this level. But again, so it's still a risk entry. We're still looking at, this is the last down move. And it's still testing the supply that caused this down move. So there is no reason why this isn't going to reject here and make a lower low still. But it's worth watching. If this is a bigger reversal based on the swing fail at the low there, then you can potentially watch for a re-entry there to then maybe get you up to higher supply. But yeah, that's one of the stronger ones. Okay, and then request I had for uni. God, I'm getting a lot of back pain just sitting at the moment. Because I've gone back to the gym again. Gives you back pain. I think it's the irony of the more you exercise, the more pain you're in. Okay, uni, where are we at? Something I haven't updated because I haven't got to the S's on the alphabet yet. I haven't done anything from S to Z. I haven't updated those charts for a while, so I need to just delete some of the old zones off. Okay, so what have we got here? It's probably a little bit what I was talking about earlier with the challenge of some of the larger structures. So, from an annual perspective, this is just kind of a sideways structure. It's got a 3-month supply at the high that it's obviously rejected. Take some of these old zones out. That is obviously rejected here for a very nice down move. But then it's also now got a 3-month demand at the low, which it already tested to get that move into supply. And then it's made a new 2-month demand, which obviously is what I had alerted here, but has come back down much deeper inside. And let's see what the monthly looks like. Okay, so at least this is one of the ones that doesn't have a new 2-month or monthly supply. I'll take out another couple of levels here. Yeah, so I guess this is one, it's challenge. This is, it's not a firm buy, but it's certainly more a buy than a sell on the higher time frame right now. But again, like I've said from previous the previous structures, that I just don't know if these are going to be up move, retracement, correction, 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 drop. And that's the major risk here. Or are we up move, retracement, accumulation, 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 pump? There isn't enough history to tell. And I'm seeing just a mix, like some alts have come down and taken out this low, have come down and taken out these lows already, taken out this demand. Not drawing now. No, having a technical malfunction on TradingView. Try again. This has happened to me the odd time before, and I have no idea why it does. Just suddenly the drawing ability to draw disappears. But sometimes it works when I change the tool. Yeah, okay. So yeah, are we just having accumulation through? So we just don't have enough history to tell. Like, I don't know if this is an uptrend or if this is just a sideways move or if this is downtrend starting. Is it really an uptrend? If it was really an uptrend and we were going to have strength, I think we should have seen that already. Like, I don't like the fact this is corrective. But yeah, what I was going to say before is that, a lot of these, they had the demand here. Then it had this new demand that I drew very badly, new demand made in here. And you can see here, it's already tested that new demand. It's made a higher high, but only on a swing failure, and it's gone straight into supply. So coming back to test this demand, yeah, I wouldn't say short here for sure, but it's not a strong demand to look for longs. And we are seeing now some of these alts with similar structures are not holding here. They have dropped through already, and some, have even dropped down and taken the lows out. So I guess in Uni's favor, it is holding for now. 2 months. Let me just look at, so we own 2 months demand. We're coming back and testing this. So it's got a 2 week supply in here. So I don't really like that it had such a weak bounce off, but I mean, it could just be a timing thing if it hit at a bad time. But you know, this 2 months that I would have had alerted in there, it's had such a weak bounce, so it's come quite deep inside it into this weekly, but it hasn't got up and made supply, or it hasn't gone up to test supply. So it's a very weak bounce in the grand scheme of things. I should put an alert in there while I'm here. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably be looking for down here. Let me see if there's a monthly. I think there's a monthly in there. Yeah, so I guess like may bounce here. I don't think it's high probability. There is a monthly untested down here, although it has tested the 3 week just above it. So like that would be where I would prefer to look for longs now, I think. Now we've had such a weak bounce on this 2 month, and the fact it's just holding and consolidating in there. And it wasn't a good 2 month in the first place. The swing failed of the high makes it also risky. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to think it through because it's actually a request rather than just me waxing lyrical or randomly on structures. But also you've obviously picked a request that doesn't have the cleanest structure. So I guess if somebody was asking me this and they were asking whether they should buy it, I would say no. There are better things to buy. If they're asking if they should sell it, I would also say no, because it's at support. So if you're asking me this because this is something you're trapped in, then I would think it is at a point you can look to DCA, but obviously assume this weekly or 2 weekly zone is going to hold in here. So it is possible you could DCA, and then I would say exit here if you can exit at break even. If you think this is going to be super bullish, it's possible. It is holding demand, it is holding a local uptrend, but as I say, you are running that bigger risk of this being a corrective structure of the drop. It's hit 3 month supply up there, and it's going to ultimately take out this low. So if you do want to DCA this, I would say be very careful and make sure you exit if you're wrong. Be careful of this 2 week, and there's also a weekly supply in there as well, which is just slightly lower than the 2 weeks. So just be a bit careful of that resistance there. If it gets up here, be very careful. I'm hoping you haven't bought the top. If it comes down here, this is another possibility of a bounce, but again, it's not. I just don't think I'll put an alert there because I'm here. But again, it's not the highest probability long entry. If it comes down here, month demand. Yeah, it's not the highest probability long entry there. And the bigger structure it is in this 3 month demand, but with so many tests on it, like my thoughts are really that this should break down lower from the higher time frame perspective. But I hope I'm wrong, so I don't know. Yeah, so like I hope you're not asking, I hope you're just asking whether you should buy this, and if that's the case, then my answer would be it's probably not one of the highest probability ones, but you can look for an entry here. If you're asking because you're trapped in it, that makes me slightly more nervous for you. I'm starting to lose my voice a bit now. I was out a bit too late last night. Yeah, if you're trapped in it, that makes me slightly more nervous for you, but again, it is at a point you can look to DCA, but DCA with your stop below this low, and assume that the low is in now, and keep an eye on what the rest of the market's doing. My preference to DCA would be in this monthly, but even then, yeah, like I say, you are running the risk of this being the bigger structure and this taking out the low. Unfortunately, there's too many alts, and I can't think of a similar example at the moment to kind of show you of something that has broken down. And obviously, inevitably, anything I pick now is probably going to be ones that are holding. But yeah, I mean, I guess that this, you can kind of compare uni to this to some extent, I guess. and this, in fact, the reason I use this is because it's got a bit more history. So again, this we had an uptrend, a retracement, an uptrend, and obviously a much more significant retracement, but this is still like, it's looking very corrective. But it could still be accumulation. We are still coming into demand, so it could still run here, even if it just does another wave to make a bigger flag. And I guess that's generally what I'm seeing across the board with alts. It's that, we don't have strong, we are all coming into demands here, but they're not strong. A lot of them are coming off these major monthly supplies. So yes, it's good to be in demand. Yes, we might get a bounce, but I'm not like massively bullish. I guess the only other thing I haven't really covered though is the others chart. So I guess that could make you slightly more confident. Let me just check and see if I've got any other requests first. No other requests at the moment. But yeah, so I'll look quickly at the others chart. So really, that's going to define what we see across the board. But even that, I know there's going to be indecision in that as well. And maybe I'm just generally, I'm an indecisive person because I'm quite analytical. So I tend to see all the different scenarios and then can get caught up in a bit of analysis paralysis, which is why I then end up just being a scalper, because that's much safer for me. I guess in the alt market's favour, we had a monthly supply here on the US dollar dominance. We swing failed it, and then we came down and took out the low, and now we're back in 2 month supply. We have a monthly demand below, so again, like if people were asking me whether they should buy this, I would be saying wait till here at least. So, and that, if that happens, that obviously then leads the alt markets and BTC, etc. are going to pump. Sorry, no, that wasn't a line related, it was just me saying pump. But yeah, so ideally I'd like to see a retracement on this, and that allows the alt market some time to move. The problem we have is, currently we're still holding and we're still trying to figure out if this is the top or not. It does have a weekly demand that it came down. So it's the same as the alt market in reverse, really. This didn't actually make a weekly demand, I don't think, but it had a 5-day already in there. Let me just check the weekly, see if I can change that. No, so this did make a weekly, just by a hair, but it already had the 5-day demand, the same as alts in reverse. So it bounced in here and it's bounced back up. So, we just still don't know, is this making a high? Is this topping out? Ready for that drop? It's at a point that I would look for that and would be relatively confident of that happening. But again, the other major issue is that, we are in 6 month demand here. And I guess that's the alt market in reverse. We're in a 6 month demand. We've made a double bottom. Is this just the retracement of that up move? And now we're going to see that. And that's the major risk for crypto as a whole, and similarly, we've come down, we've made a double bottom in here, is that just going to take off? In a perfect world, at least, even if that happens, we get this retest first, which then gives the alt market some respite. If people are trapped, they can get out or break even, at least. Or are we just going to continue the bigger downtrend? Is this here, retest, drop? It's all probabilities either way. And this is, I'm in an indecisive point. I was very bullish on this chart here and bearish on the whole market because this had come down and hit monthly demand inside 6 month demand. But when it then starts doing sideways correction, it then becomes harder because it's a more complex structure rather than just a basic retest up move. So that's kind of my indecision across the market at the moment, as reflected in the US dollar dominance chart. The others chart, this is others dominance. Yeah, others dominance, I had the same indecisiveness anyway. It's swing failed this low here, so could make a run up. It is overarchingly in yearly demand, but now also has a 2 month supply above, like so many of the alts do. So I guess at least if you're watching still from talking about uni, in its favour, it doesn't have a monthly or 2 monthly supply like many of the other alts. So there is that. And then the others chart itself, like the market cap chart, is, you know, it's not dissimilar to Ether and my thoughts on Ether. Like, I have a major concern with this, that there are two critical things for me on this chart. One, that we didn't test here. That, you know, we came down, we did test, you know, this previous high level. And second, that we haven't broken out. You know, and it's tried twice. So, you know, it came down here, it had the retracement, came back into demand, and still has been unable to break out on the second try. So those are my kind of real issues with this chart. At the moment, this is very much looking like a double top for a move down, and the fact it has a demand here that isn't tested. You know, I don't even necessarily think that it's going to bounce here, and I've said the same with Ether, you know, that this demand is weak because it's been unable to break the high. Same on the Ether chart, this demand is also weak because it's been unable to break the high. It doesn't mean they're not going to get bounces, but they are weak demands and they are lower probability than a clean demand that has made a new high. So, you know, in contrast, for example, you know, I guess we can see here, so this was a demand, you know, it hit, you know, obviously it didn't break straight out, it did reject supply, and it did come back and make a higher low here. So that's why I say you've got the two options. You've got the zigzag, where it makes the C wave, this is the A, B, C, or you've got the triangle, where it's making an A, B, C with a higher low. So we had the COVID dip, and it made the higher low, it made the triangle, and then broke out. Here, lost my train of thought for a moment, but I guess, you know, so there is a chance here that we're going to see similar, I guess, so we could get this triangle, you know, and get that bounce in here, and that would be similar to here. I kind of have a feeling with Elliott waves that there's I feel like that there's some studying done on if one makes a triangle or has a shallow correction, the other one makes a deeper correction, and which would then fall into the potentially one correction being a triangle and the other being a zigzag. But I know these are this is my reticence with the market as a whole, I guess, that, you know, is this now just rolling over? And we have so many alts in the market now, and so much sort of spread out liquidity, that alts can move. It can make alts move very fast, but it can make alts move very fast in both directions, both up and down. But then from a structural perspective on this, you know, like I have said, you know, I was looking for longs here. This is a 2-month demand with a monthly inside it. So at least I would like, you know, this to have bounced up to here. And then, you know, it can still potentially make the higher high from this point. Until it breaks this zone, you know, we are still in an uptrend. So while I have reticence, because of the fact that this hasn't broken out at this point, this is still an uptrend. So there is still some probability that it's going to take out the high. But yeah, we are certainly at a point that it's okay to be longing alts. The second test, it's held the level, still got a bit of supply above, but yeah, if we can start to see some alts move, like we've seen on Nero Ether, for example, we can potentially see at least a move up into here, even if we don't get, you know, the bigger move taking out that wave high. So yeah, I mean, that's basically it on others. I don't think there's any other alts that I really wanted to go over. I'm trying to think. Vita, I think it's just a huge drop because it was delisted from Binance, so I wouldn't suggest longing that. Although I think it's still on. ZKL was a very big disappointment to me. This, I thought, had a nice consolidation. It was one of the ones that was looking way stronger than everything else when everything else was dumping. So I kind of had said this at this point or probably at this point in time, that, you know, this was kind of a nice consolidation. We should keep an eye on this belongs to try and get us up to there. But then it just slowly did a drift of death and then fell off a cliff today. So that's somewhat disappointing. I put a short alert in there. But I have said, you know, obviously there's a risk it's going to run through the trend line stops on this. So I don't know. I mean, this might end up as an accumulation. Oops. My brush is not working well again. Is this going to end up as a Why is the brush not working again? Okay, and back. Is this ending up as an accumulation, manipulation, distribution? Possibly. Particularly with these trend line stops through here, but you know, I've set the alert there so I can just watch if and when it comes and retests, and then potentially, you know, like just keep an eye on the low time frames on this and see if it gives something. But at the moment, this is just that's a nasty drop off a cliff. And also probably check on this. Like, I don't know if it's just a MEXC. Yeah, it's just on MEXC and gate, so that's also possible that it's a delisting dump. So for at least from futures. But yeah, we'll see on that. Zero, so more positive move today. Yeah, I did have a look at this earlier. So yeah, but I was just a bit late on it. So yeah, that's obviously was potential long on the weekly demand, but it's coming off 2 monthly supply again. So it's just, so this is a nice example actually of something that can run through zones. So it's come up into 2 monthly supply and just dropped straight off it. And in this case, you know, it had a little weekly there, but it's gone all the way to the top. But there would have been zones like throughout and down, and that's, yeah, just highlights again, like I say, I had that reticence of whether I should put entries on 5 days and 3 days and weeklies that are through this last downtrend, and this is a nice example of how it's just run. If I had, it would have run through all of them. But it has come back down into weekly demand, but yeah, I don't like that for longs particularly because of the 2 month supply. I think I finished. I'm trying to remember if I should have finished everything I needed to say on uni. Yeah, I think I was just indecisive on that. Let me have a look if anything's pumped that's worth mentioning since I've been on stream. Pumped or dumped. So on the dump side, oh, stonks, yeah. Stonks is kind of interesting. I actually have put, so this is, it has made a weekly demand right at current price or just below current price. So I put an aggressive alert on this. So keep an eye on this if it comes back into that zone. It's a weak weekly demand. It hasn't broken the high, but one of the few things that's looking vaguely interesting to the long side. Be a little bit careful it doesn't make supply immediately above if you get into this, because it could make a 2 day supply there, which is going to make this pretty much, yeah, it's going to make it much lower probability. But just keep an eye on that if it comes into that weekly zone right at the top there, and then I'll reset the alert for down below if this hits. But yeah, that's something that's worth keeping an eye on because it's consolidating through here slowly. Maybe it will just tip down into that weekly demand before taking off. You never know. Alpha Sol. Yeah, I knew I had an alert on this from a few days ago, so I wanted to see what that done. So again, it's just another example of something that's got a bottomless pit. It's worth looking to see if it's going to make the higher low for the long entry. In this case, it did bounce, but then went straight back up into daily supply. But again, it's still overarchingly in a downtrend. It's just messing around in the daily downtrend. So that's not looking like it's going to go much further. Mumu was another one I think I had. Okay, so I had a short entry on this. So again, weekly supply at the point of breakdown from, I'm guessing, what's all-time low. Again, worth looking for some of these aggressive entries, because we're not necessarily going to retrace all the way back up here, although there would be higher probability short entries if we do get up there, but it may just reject here and continue this weekly downtrend. And I think I need to go and get dinner, so I'm gonna sign off shortly, but just have a quick look at what on the long side. So Blaze, yeah, I did have a quick glance at this earlier because it was one of the higher performers, up 37%, but I think it's just gone straight into weekly supply. I believe this was also delisted by Binance, at least Binance Futures. Let me have a quick look. Yeah, so it's got whatever this premium index is on Binance, but no actual chart. So, and then we've got MEXC, we've still got, but that's the only, and then some of the smaller exchanges. I mean, it's still listed spot in a number of places, but yeah, all the smaller, not on Binance or on Bybit. So yeah, that can potentially just be a bearish retest, but we'll see. But I think I like this overall. Oh, I did previously because it had an annual demand, but as you can see, it's come all the way back through that. But yeah, this is not something I would really go into a long on at this point. I mean, it has come back into a weekly demand here, but it's just gone straight into a weekly supply. That's that, and res we already looked at. I think I commented on that already. Yeah, I was looking for that. Oh, yeah, no, that already had the long entry, but not really looking for a long on that right now. Alka quite liked, and Alka also did talk about and gave, I think I had a long entry on this. Oh no, maybe not, and maybe somebody, yeah, I think somebody mentioned it at the time. So we did talk about that, but I think I hadn't had it alerted previously. But on the radium chart, it had an 8-hour demand at the low here. And I think I did reset an alert for a daily or 3-day demand, but it hasn't come back to it. But yeah, that's one of the nice stronger ones. And then yeah, BCH is up there, Ondo and a few others. And Doggy AI, that's the only other one probably that's worth commenting on, that it still keeps grinding up. I did talk about this, I think, around here, and I wanted to get a retest back down here. It was a 2-hour demand, so I wasn't overly confident of it, but it has pushed more. I think it was at this point I was hoping to get a drop into there. But again, it's still holding in this daily supply. But this is something, I guess, that has the potential to take off. It is grinding slowly through supply. Would be nice if it came and gave another test back down on this 5-day. I think it's a 5-day zone. Or if it gets, it's going to just hold. Yeah, so there's now a 5-day zone in there, so that makes that a better long entry. I think I had a green before, but a black before, because it was a little lower probability. But it's still holding daily and 2-day demand up here, so yeah, that's definitely one for your radar on the long side, because if it does get through here, then it's free game. There's no supply on it, and I have absolutely no idea if it's got any link. Knowing crypto, it's probably got absolutely zero link to Doggy or anything else. Yeah, and it's a slow grind, so it is a bit corrective. It's not very impulsive, but yeah, if this can hold through here, this might make a decent long entry, or if it retests down in this 5-day demand. I can see Bitcoin's not really moving much at the moment, so the market just isn't being driven. So maybe we'll get a bit of sideways on Bitcoin, which will allow us to actually trade some of these alts and allow others to bounce a little bit. And then yeah, so I think I'm going to leave it there. That's 1 hour and 20 minutes, as usual, longer than I expected. And then I will upload this, yeah, I'll probably have to do timestamps on it a bit later, but I'll put the upload in, and yeah, so, and yeah, as I always say, feel free to put any requests in Telegram at any time, and then I can add that to any streams that I'm doing, and or just do a chart for you. Please like and subscribe, and yeah, I will see you on the next stream.